the podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're joining you today from the First United Bank Double T 97.3 studio here with you until 6 o'clock. We'd love to get your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. Gus, how you going?
I'm doing all right. It's busy Wednesday. This Wednesday may be very indicative of the Chuck Hines adage, Wednesday is when the work gets done, right? I feel like, I felt like it was just go. I'm like, oh crap, it's 2:30. Like just something to do every minute of the day this morning. So here we are.
Clint, how are you going?
I'm good. Been a good Wednesday.
All right.
Oh boy.
We'll have the high school fan zone for you at 7 o'clock on 100.7 The Score. Astros and Phillies game 4 of the Fall Classic tonight here on Double T 97.3. Phillies winners yesterday over America's team 7-0, taking a 2-1 lead in that series.
That Christian Javier versus Aaron Nola tonight.
That's right.
And this is where the rain day maybe helps the Phillies more than the Astros.
Yeah.
Because it felt like the Astros would have maybe a bit of an edge in a 4 versus 4. Number 4 starter versus number 4 starter. But, this extra day is going to buy the Phillies. It felt like one of the advantages the Astros maybe had was a little more starting pitching depth. Maybe one pitcher deeper, maybe 1.5 pitchers deeper. Well, the number 3s pitched last night, and one of them threw really well, and the other one not so much. So if it goes like it did last night, all this other subtle stuff that we're talking about sort of goes out the window. But that place was cranked last night.
Sure was.
The home runs early. We talked about Baylor doing a good job here of maybe taking the crowd out of it in a way. Running the ball 4 yards, 5 yards a pop, getting in the huddle, slowing things down. The Phillies did what you want to do in front of a big crowd. 2-run jack early from their favorite player.
Keep them engaged, keep them fired up.
And then the pitcher's hanging zeros. Like, that one, 7-0 almost. It was 5-0 for a big chunk of that game, and it didn't even feel like it was that close.
Get this on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Somebody has this. Following up on T-Money 806 comments on the previous show, that Kansas additional self-implementation of only allowing 5 balls during warm-ups. They will also only allow half the number of normal towels for the players in the first half of non-conference.
It's probably important to remember that these are their self-imposed, hey, we're punishing ourselves here, hope you like it. The actual penalties from the NCAA most likely won't come until after the season, so April, May, whatever. So,
yeah, and it's not even the NCAA necessarily specifically. It's that
the committee,
independent, whatever that acronym is,
IARP or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, you're exactly right. But yeah, the whole point there to say that they're not done yet. That committee can go, okay, they've punished themselves enough, or can come in and go, yeah, that was nice, but you're suspended for more, or who knows what all else. But yeah, they're Kansas is trying to mitigate some things by doing it this way.
Yeah, and it's an interesting kind of deal because it's here are the self-imposed sanctions. 4-game suspension for Bill Self and assistant coach Curtis Townsend. That will be served first 4 regular season games of this year. Self and Townsend will not go on the road recruiting for 4 months, April through July next year. They'll lower the amount of visits they allow in by 4, and then 3 scholarships taken away over the next 3 years. No official visits for late night at the Fog this year. Problem is, it's like, what doesn't really say what this is for, right? Like, part of it needs to be some kind of admission of wrongdoing, right? Because you're not just doing this just to do it. You know, like, you're not just, hey, I'm just going to suspend myself for no reason, and just to get ahead of this little issue here on this side of the table. This is going to be one of those shows, if you're a longtime listener, to where you might hear me blow my nose a little bit. If that grosses you out, totally understand. It's just, that's what's going to happen the next 3 hours. So if you need to figure something else out, totally understand. Not going to hurt my feelings. But that's just what has to happen in order for me to get through these 3 hours.
I feel your pain. I was right there exactly 2 weeks ago. So just trying to just get to the end of the segment.
Well, my second Kleenex box of the day.
Hang in there, pal. And this goes back to the Adidas stuff, and that Self and Townsend encouraged Adidas and Adidas employees to steer top recruits to Kansas. And the reality of it is that I don't know if some of this or all of this would no longer be against the rules given the NIL legislation, but there's that may be part of what's going on as well. And the same committee that's dealing with Kansas in this process is the same one that ruled, the IARP, that ruled that Penny Hardaway did not violate any rules, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe back right at the beginning of the semester. So, it's that. I think Arizona, LSU, who else? Louisville, maybe were involved in that
North
5 or 6
Carolina
years
State.
ago. Yeah, there you go. So it was this is the long, slow response to all of that. So
it just goes back to, though, what are you self-imposing penalties for? I mean, Clint, you would know this way better than me because you're far closer to it than I am, as you are an unabashed Kansas basketball fan, which is how you described yourself to Level and me way back in the day. I'm a Kansas basketball fan.
Okay. So we're sticking with
up until like this morning, it's been defiance from Bill Self, right? I've done nothing wrong. Am I right here? Or is this the Benadryl like kicking in and I'm just totally misremembering things?
No, I mean, it was from the start saying I didn't do anything wrong. There, we had, if something happened, we had no involvement. We have no idea where those texts came from. We don't believe in phones in the state of Kansas. It was that sort of argument over and over and over again. And then the longer, because this started in 2017. This is when the infractions. The longer it's gone on, the more that they've stretched this, the more double rods that they've thrown up. Again, they showed.
Didn't they sue? Didn't they sue the NCAA for this?
They and it's been a back and forth, and it's made a mockery of it. And essentially, it was another reason of, again, looking to Oklahoma State, who got screwed. This is why you don't play ball, because it's been working out for them now. As Gus said, at the end of next season or this season will be when if there is a punishment, that's when it'll be official from the IARP. But I'll just say, and I think everyone is thinking this, if there's much added to it, it's not going to be that severe.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, it's the Juice on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Dr. Mike Gustafson and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. Time for some headlines brought to you by our friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. The Lady Raiders defeated the Midwestern State Mustangs 84-50 last night in an exhibition game at the USA. Riley McKinney led all scorers with 19 points. She was one of 4 Lady Raiders to reach double figures. Highly touted freshman Bailey Maupin added 17 points off of the bench in her much-anticipated Lady Raider debut. Tech will open up its season on Monday afternoon against Texas A&M Corpus Christi with a tip-off set for 5:30. Washington Commanders co-owners Dan and Tanya Snyder announced that they've hired Bank of America Securities to explore potential transactions involving the team. They did not specify whether they are exploring a sale of the team or just pursuing minority investors, but I think everybody's hoping that they're selling the team. Fingers crossed.
I think you're right about that. I think everyone in their fan base feels that way.
Kansas basketball coach Bill Self and assistant Curtis Townsend on Wednesday said that, or have been suspended for the first 4 games of the season. The Jayhawks also imposed several recruiting restrictions as part of the fallout from the FBI investigation into college basketball corruption stemming from 2017. Finally, undefeated Tennessee earned the number 1 spot in the college football playoff initial top 25 rankings last night, marking the first time in the program's history that it cracked the top 4. Ohio State was number 2. Georgia was number 3. Clemson was number 4. Undefeated Michigan, number 5. One-loss Alabama, number 6. And undefeated TCU was number 7. You too can join the program. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. The juice brought to you by our friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, Finer Foods.
The much gnashing of teeth, I guess, on Twitter from some of the folks regarding the college football playoff, the first poll. And you talked about yesterday, you gave some historic precedent for some things, but it's awful early to get hung up on who's number 8 versus number 9 or 6 versus 5 or whatever. A lot of ball to be played.
Well, I mean, you're right, and but at the same time, I do think that you can check where you are or where a specific team is, evaluate their resume up to this point, and then look ahead to see what they have left, to see how much meat is left on the proverbial bone. And TCU just got done playing, I think, 4 ranked teams all in a row. And, you know, the meat of their schedule is over with. And so while, sure, there's still plenty of time left for Tennessee and Georgia to take a loss or 2 each, or Ohio State to take a loss or 2, et cetera, you know, there are very few opportunities left for TCU to kind of add on to that resume. You've got the Big 12 championship game. You've got a game against Texas, although the Longhorns are just barely hanging in there at number 24 in the playoff ranking. So, yeah, that part puzzled me. I mean, I don't have a problem with Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia all being the top 3 in whatever order. Clemson has not been impressive. They are undefeated. They do have wins over 3 ranked teams in the playoff rankings, which is nice. But I think you should knock them for the same thing that they knocked TCU in terms of game control.
I agree.
I mean, TCU, it's a fact, right? They trailed at the half to Kansas State. They were down at the half to Oklahoma State. You know, they've scuffed around a bit, right? They were tied in the third quarter to West Virginia, I believe. But, I mean, Clemson has been in a similar boat.
I think could not agree more with you about the Clemson thing, and you know, and there was some criticism of them being behind one-loss Bama, because you got 6 undefeated teams, but Bama inserted in there at 6 ahead of number 7 TCU, and the game control thing. You know, it's the facts are the facts. In terms of the things you're saying, and you have to feel the same way about Clemson. There's nothing about that sort of thing that you know, where they've been this year and their wins, and so, you know, taking the quarterback out. It's just that their weakness has come probably in offense that hadn't played great, as opposed to TCU, which is more of a defense that hasn't played great. And you know what I think it comes down to ultimately is that committee's going, hey, we think that if Alabama played TCU, Alabama would win. You know, now I know it's not as simple as saying, let's take a vote. But I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. Do I agree with that? It's a hard thing to swallow because I think obviously the loser of Tennessee, Georgia isn't dropping. I don't know, but I would be surprised if they drop below TCU. And let's assume TCU wins this week. All right. I don't think the loser of Ohio State and Michigan, should they both stay undefeated, drops below TCU. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that because that one comes so late in the year that, if TCU's 12-0, they may very well pass the loser of Ohio State and Michigan. But the tough thing, as soon as I saw that poll last night, I was like, where's TCU? Because the first thing that pops up is the 4, obviously. Right. And I was like, ooh, this is what Aaron said an hour ago. It gives you a sense, it gives us a sense of what that committee thinks about the Big 12.
What do you recall the score of the LSU Ole Miss game that was just, 10 days ago, give or take, 11 days ago?
I don't.
It was 45-20.
20?
45-20.
20, yeah, okay.
It was
I thought you said 45-40.
No,
at first
25-point margin of victory for LSU. Mm-hmm. They scored 21 points in the third quarter. They scored, 28 points unanswered in the second half. LSU was 10th in this poll. Ole Miss is 11th. It makes – if that's where it settles, right, at the end of the season, fine. But you're going to tell me just 10 days ago LSU mollywopped the hell out of Ole Miss, and yet they're one spot better, really?
I saw and that's always the case with polling. If number 25 beats number 8, 8's not dropping necessarily below 25. They just move closer together on the poll. But you're like, how are they 12th and how are we 17th? Like, where you started,
And how it's great. Outrage is like a nice kind of natural remedy for feeling sick. Does somebody want to explain to me and make a case for why USC is ranked 9th in this poll? How does that make any damn sense? Rice, Stanford, Fresno State, Oregon State, which they won by 3 points, Arizona State, Washington State, they lose their only ranked matchup, and they win at Arizona, not a great Arizona team, by 8 points. What part of that, outside of the USC on their helmet, the Trojan, right, and those awesome uniforms, there's nothing. There's nothing on that resume that says, oh, this is for sure a top 7 team or a top 10 team.
Perhaps the most interesting part I saw today with regard to this polling was the hypothetical of taking this 12-team field, 1 through 12, and applying it to the playoff format that's being proposed. And what it allowed me to do, because we'd seen a lot of this in writing, but just to put school names and where they are currently and wrap my brain around this. Since we're going to break, we can come back to this. Well, yeah.
Keep your brain wrapped.
I'll do my best.
More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're joining you today until 6 o'clock. We'd love to get your thoughts and your comments on the EH Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. You were unwrapping your brain as we went to break. You kept it on. Please continue.
Yeah, what I was addressing was an application of the, I guess, hypothetical or proposed 12-team playoff field, which appears like it's going to happen, hopefully sooner than later. Hopefully 2 years from now, right? 24, 25, is that right?
Yes.
If not, it'll be 4 years from now. As taking that 12-team model and applying it to yesterday's poll. 1 through 4 seeds would be the ones that get a bye, and it's the top 4 ranked. What they're doing is just taking each conference's top ranked team as the champion.
Sure.
For the obviously the season hasn't played out. So number 1 Tennessee gets a bye. They're on the same side of the bracket as number 4 TCU, and then on the opposite side, Ohio State and Clemson in the 2 and 3 holes, and then you've got 8 versus 9, 12 versus 5, 6 versus 11, 10 versus 7. And I was thinking, boy, the SEC would gnash their teeth here at this. But we'll just start at the top. And the Pac-12 might as well. The 8 versus 9 seeds, Oregon versus USC. Which, again, the seeding is just yesterday's poll. It's 8 versus 9.
We have 3 hours, so I'm not going to feel bad about this kind of sidebar question. We know in the NCAA basketball tournament, and I don't know how the baseball tournament does this. Maybe they kind of lean in this direction too. But in the basketball tournament, they actively try to avoid kind of like conference rematches in those early rounds.
Opening round, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, if it happens in the Sweet 16, hey, can't help you.
Right.
But if they're not going to put USC and Oregon in the round of 64. Does baseball do something like that?
Baseball won't send 2 teams from the same conference to the same regional.
Right. But in the Supers, they might match.
Yeah, but you could be seeded that if both ones win, then they would play in the Super, and that's what Tech and Oklahoma State had here.
Sure.
And there's usually an example of that or two every year. If an upset takes place, there's really nothing you can do about it. But I'm with you on that. And
I wonder if they would do that for football.
I know. With the 64-team field, it's probably easier to finagle a little bit than in a 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I know you're the 9 seed, but we're going to move you down to 11 so you don't play. And maybe you'd go, okay, but I don't know. Anyway, 8 versus 9, Oregon, USC. 5 versus 12, Georgia, Tulane. 6 versus 11, Michigan, Ole Miss. 7 versus 10, Alabama, LSU.
What was that Georgia matchup?
Tulane.
5 and 12?
Tulane at 12, yeah.
Man.
I know.
That might be the best spot to be in.
5,
because you get a game on campus. It's a playoff game, and more often than not, it's going to be some group of 5 team. Now, maybe on the other hand, you go, okay, that's nice, but at the same time, that's one of those games where you can't really win, But like if you have a bye, you might be, you'll go in the second round, maybe lose, then you're barely there. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry,
that's a great point about the campus seeds, because thinking, well, the bye would, everybody's going to want the bye, just to not have to play the extra game, not have to have a quarterback roll his ankle or whatever. So what you're saying is so great about if it was your first time to really arrive on the scene, that that game right there, I don't know. A Georgia-Tulane game would be one of the biggest games in Tulane school history. Now, of course, it would be on the road, but
right.
I'm with you there.
Maybe 6 is actually the best spot, because at that point, you play the 11 seed. In this case, it's Ole Miss, and the 6 seed is Michigan, and then at most you get the 2 seed in the semifinal.
Yeah, you'd land on the 3-2 side. Yep, maybe 6-7 there. Yeah, I'm with you. And then they put some proposed dates on there so that the first round stuff, those campus games, would be Saturday, December 13 and 14. And then, the rest of it goes to New Year's Eve. That's where it gets to. That's where then the buys would kick in and push back to.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. The first rounds would be when?
December 13 and 14.
Man, that's
and
a
then it's
big
and then
break,
that would
dude.
that's a 2-week break. To be 17, 2.5. Not a full 3-week break, but two weeks and a couple of days. And what it is for these 4 teams, it becomes what it is now. You know what I mean? The conference, essentially, you play the kind of conference championship game, and then you don't play again for about a month to roughly New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. These 5 versus 12 would play that second weekend in December, and then they would have a roughly 2-week, because it looks like Tuesday, December 34th, Wednesday, January 1st. Let me say that again. Tuesday, December 31st, Wednesday, January 1st. So, 2.5 week bye, And then the other thing, and this stuff these are all just proposed dates and sites and stuff, but these things taking place in bowl game sites. And so what you said was exactly right. The conference, the higher seed in those opening games are the ones that are on campus, and then everything else, like one of the quarterfinal games, Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar, and then the semifinals, Cotton and Orange, and then national championship game in Atlanta. And so, fun little hypothetical. And this says that the College Football Playoff already has selected Atlanta as the site for the 2025 national championship game. So that part may very well stay in place, whether it's a 14 playoff or an 8 or a 12 rather.
Yeah, I think those on-campus games are going to be gigantic.
Oh my gosh! Well, think about maybe a home field advantage with Ole Miss like this again, hypothetical. Number 11 Ole Miss going to number 6 Michigan. Think it's chilly in Ann Arbor on December 14th.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't you? I mean, I'm not saying we don't really see weather factor in. But the conferences, for the most part, are sort of regional. So all the Big Ten schools are cold once you get to November. All the SEC schools are hot in November, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our conference is about to test this theory as we spread out all over the map. November games, we've got a November game in Ames, November game in Provo, Morgantown, Cincinnati. It's going to be a little dicey.
Something else about that proposed 12-team field, kind of applying last night's rankings to the 12-team playoff format. It's a huge advantage for TCU to get that bye, because there's not going to be some kind of insane home field advantage in that stadium. It's like 40,000 people, and imagine Tulane going to Georgia.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Lions Den meet Necklace.
Right.
Think about Ole Miss going to Michigan.
Yeah, that game in Michigan. Yeah,
or Alabama.
Right.
But if Baylor, if TCU, if one of those programs with a smaller stadium gets in and gets one of those first round on campus games, that's not quite as imposing as going to the Big House or Death Valley, right?
Yeah, for an 80, 90, 100 grand, 100K. That's a great point. I think the imposing side of that may be that you would drag some teams into some regional stuff that would be different. It would feel more like the NFL in the sense that, like, ooh, you don't want to go to Ann Arbor. Just like what we heard forever. You don't want to go to Buffalo. You don't want to go to maybe even Kansas City, but you don't want to go to Buffalo. You don't want to go to New England. For all those years, Brady and those guys would drag those teams up to New England and play in that cold and crap, and you'd see the Tennessee Titans or somebody just fold up. If you don't have the right,
that a little bit.
Yeah, if you don't have the right personnel to deal with that, and teams that are comfortable playing in that kind of stuff, and these regional weather differences would start to play out. It would make me, to your point about TCU, I mean, if I were them, I would, again, all this hypothetical, if I were them, I wonder at what point they would consider, hey, let's move this over to Jerry World so we could get 100,000 people there or whatever that place seats, 80,000, 90,000, whatever, versus, no, we want all the pageantry we can gin up here on our campus.
I mean, if they can fill it, I think if you hold that thing in Gerald, you might just have a bunch of Georgia fans,
yes,
making up more than half the crowd. More Tech Talk next.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
With you today until 6 o'clock. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. How about this headline from the Today Show? And I'd like to know a lot more about this.
Okay.
Headline: Miss Argentina 2020 and Miss Puerto Rico 2020 wrote on Instagram, that they got married in October.
Oh, that's delightful. I mean, that.
That's how about that?
Yeah.
Hopefully, Cinemax gets the film rights. All right. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from Bobby Hot Dogs. Aaron, has Raymar explored the possibility of a self-imposed suspension of all employees of Kansas origin? No. Don't think so.
We'll just draw it out. We'll draw out the ban.
Oh, no, yeah. Lawsuit, fight it.
Double rods, sue.
Offer a self-imposed
Hey, can we
4-day
send this
suspension.
to another radio station to handle this
an
decision?
independent counsel, sure. This in the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Hey, guys, I'm curious. Where does the money from the media revenue go? It obviously does not go to facilities and whatnot. Texas Tech had 2 boosters pay for the Womble Center and the end zone upgrade.
Yeah, typically the revenue is operating budget. Now I'm speaking in very broad terms. Operations, paying salaries, airplane tickets, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas the facility, and I would even say facility maintenance, whereas a lot of those facilities are, they tout the fact that they're private fundraising. It's not any money from the state. It's not a, now they'll issue bonds and do some things like that. And so I'm not saying some of that operations doesn't include a little bit of debt service, but just in very, very general terms, that's how that works.
Yeah, I would guess most of it goes, or at least, because, look at coaches' salaries. Look how much just at football.
Right.
Those have gone up from 2005 to now.
Sure.
Right? 2005, I think that you were maybe just at that point cracking $1 million with what you were paying Mike Leach. And now there are more than a handful of coordinators out there, actually a lot of them, that are making $1 million or more and are on multi-year contracts. And so I would guess that, that will continue. You're also paying more now for things than you did in 2005, right? You're paying for more meals and more food. You're paying for, sports psychologists. You're doing all of those things. You're paying for
Strength and conditioning,
people to help with NIL. So the list of services available to the athletes is greater now, and that's partly a recruiting tool too.
And also remember that, and I think this is where, again, we're not being super specific with this, but when we hear Red Raider Club commercials, Red Raider Club, they're sort of
I have news that warrants.
All right, let's hear it. I like that.
Clint, I want you in on this too. From Pete Thamel. Sources: Gonzaga AD Chris Stanfiord met with Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark in person in Texas last week about Gonzaga potentially joining the Big 12. This is part of broader discussions that have unfolded in recent weeks between the Big 12 and Gonzaga.
Ooh, man.
Holy bleep, dude.
Bring them.
Please
bring them.
Think about one of the things we talked about when Yormark took over, the idea of him seeing value in basketball that maybe others hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know in so many words that we're saying that right. But a move like this is all about basketball. Obviously, Gonzaga doesn't field a football team. Wow. It also, there's some West Coast involved in that, right? West Coast time zones. Ooh, mercy.
That, Brett Yormark is not messing around, dude.
And as much as I already think it's signed, sealed, delivered, everyone should have the opinion of the past 5 years, Big 12 as the best conference in basketball. You want to go ahead and put that tombstone on every other conference, you add in a Gonzaga. And then, hey, if push comes to shove and you sneak in Arizona, good grief. No argument.
Because
none.
Gonzaga makes you more attractive to Arizona, right? Because unlike probably any other, certainly not Utah, Colorado, or Arizona State, but Arizona is kind of like Kansas, right, or Kentucky, in that they kind of maybe view themselves as basketball first, right? Or at the very least, it's kind of like 50-50. You throw in Gonzaga, oh man, you went from a 10 to an 11, I think, for Arizona there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just the as much as it already should have been, but just the perennial favorite. Champion is probably safely going to be betted out of the Big 12 every year.
Man,
It's not going to happen every single year, but as far as first bets, good night.
according to Thamel's story, which I'm skimming through and I'll read more thoroughly in our next break. Quote from Thamel: "The notion of Gonzaga potentially joining the Big 12 was brought up by the conference with its television partners in a cursory manner in conversations about the league's new TV deal recently, but the potential addition had nothing to do with the Big 12's final deal." So here's what here's what I'm curious about, right? Obviously, it makes you way more attractive basketball-wise, which is great. I'm for it. Thumbs up. It was reported earlier today by Andrew Marchard or whatever from the New York Post that the pro rata clause in ESPN's contract only applies to Power 5 teams, not Group of 5. And obviously, too, Gonzaga would not be joining as a full-fledged member. They would be joining as a basketball-only member. How would that revenue work, right? Would you get any kind of increase from ESPN and Fox for that? Not a full share, but a half share, or, I mean, again, whatever it is. That part would be interesting to me. But holy smokes, that to me is gigantic. A gigantic move.
Man, that's the kind of thing, too, that the winner of this league, this conference, each year is going to feel like the winner of the SEC in football going, yeah, this is – I'm not saying they'd say, well, we've already done the hard part, but that the winner of this league will be as tested as they come. And the fourth place team in this league will be as tested as they come. Good Lord.
So were that to happen, if they announced tomorrow or whatever, you would have had 4 of the last 6 teams to play for a national championship. Texas Tech and Virginia, Baylor, Gonzaga, Kansas, North Carolina. So you'd have 4 of 6. How about that? 4 of 6.
Love it.
More Tech Talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
The Big 12 has had discussions with Gonzaga about potentially adding the Zags to the Big 12 conference. That from Pete Thamel of ESPN.com. The story says that Yormark met with Gonzaga's AD in Frisco last week when the Zags were in Dallas to play Tennessee in a scrimmage. How about that? Sneaky. You too can join the program. We'd love to hear from you today. Let us know what you think on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. We get this on the chat line. Why in the world would Miss Argentina and Miss Puerto Rico keep that marriage a secret? That is glorious news. Somebody else says this: why is the marriage of Miss Puerto Rico and Miss Argentina news to be aired? Nothing illegal happens every day between women. You are expressing a bias, not just reporting the news. Let me tell you, I will always break in anytime beauty pageant contestants marry each other. Yeah, I mean, sorry, not sorry. You kidding me? You kidding me? And then this in the chat line: can we talk more about the marriage of Miss Puerto Rico and Miss Argentina? That's from Caden.
The mind wanders, doesn't it?
Sure does. Sure does. I wonder if that's on YouTube anywhere. That Miss World contest from 2020. Anyways,
Exactly.
so if you're just tuning in, obviously the big news of the day is that Miss Argentina 2020, Miss Puerto Rico 2020 have acknowledged that they got married in October. But in all seriousness, it's being reported by ESPN, Pete Thamel, who's plugged in as all get out, that Brett Yormark met with Gonzaga's AD in Frisco last week, and the topic was Gonzaga potentially joining the Big 12. And
obviously they don't play football.
Haven't since 1941.
Right. So, and this was not really part of the media rights agreement last week. It was mentioned, I think it's reported that it was mentioned in a cursory package. So they're not really, I mean, in a cursory way. And so I don't think the money is based on, ooh, hey, that basketball league. We do know that Fox is going to play a bigger role in televising Big 12 basketball than they have in the past. So does this, I don't want to say open that deal up, but is it part of?
I don't know that this maybe, totally or even moderately changes your financial picture.
Right.
I kind of view it like, you're building a new house and you put in one of those like crushed ice makers that's separate from the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great thing to have. It's awesome. It's a really nice quality of life feature. It's one of those things where you go, I can't believe I ever lived without this. But it's not going to dramatically impact the price of the house. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're not going to be rolling in cash because of Gonzaga. You will, though, be unquestionably the number one conference in that sport in the country. You will be whole in baseball. You'll have 14 teams.
You'd be back to even numbers there.
Because Iowa State does not play baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it begins to kind of build on what Brett Yormark has said several times about his goal. He wants to make the Big 12 a national conference, and you would truly stretch coast to coast at that point.
Yeah, that's the fourth time zone. No doubt.
And adding in another team, right? When you're looking at eyes in the conference battle, when you get into conference play, it gets even more interesting than whenever you're stacking up against an Iowa and Wisconsin. All of a sudden, a TCU Gonzaga sounds more appealing. Right?
It's a mini version of what we talked about when you added USC to the Big Ten, right? You're adding a bunch of quality inventory because suddenly now Gonzaga, like you said, plays Kansas, it plays Texas Tech, it plays Baylor, it plays Texas while they're still in the conference. They play all these other teams, and those are really, really good games if you're a broadcaster to carry on your air. This in the chat line. Where does Gonzaga compete in conference now? Gonzaga plays basketball in the West Coast Conference.
Mm-hmm. And play all their sports. And I wonder what the cost of, because obviously we talk about it's basketball only. Well, does that mean they're tennis and golf teams and
I say bring them all in.
Baseball and softball and track. Do they? I don't know. I can't imagine that they wouldn't be part of that deal. Now, maybe Gonzaga would be the ones going, no, basketball only, because we don't want to be sending our tennis team to Cincinnati or get back into some of this national travel stuff.
They don't. It's not like because on like a lot of West Coast programs, they'll have swimming and diving. They'll have all kinds of
water polo and some of those very regional sports.
If you pull up Gonzaga's list of sports, it's very similar to what Texas Tech has, right? They have rowing and men's soccer. But that's it in terms of kind of stuff that you don't have.
Right.
And they have women's rowing, which you don't have. But everything else, hey, baseball, basketball, cross country, track, golf, tennis, women's soccer, bring it all in.
Yeah, I wonder what the cost is from the league point of view. Why you wouldn't? And I can't imagine. And I asked you this question off the air. I don't want we always hear media rights dollars, and we think about it as one big number, right? Between this and that and whatever. Well, $380 million is what we talked about, divided 12 ways eventually. And then we'll throw in different revenues and different things that should get us up around 50. That's what a lot of writers are saying. A lot of the people who know that kind of stuff, but. Is there something about this that you go out and that Fox goes, oh, hey, if the Gonzaga's part of the picture, there's a little bit more money somehow, or enough to wet the whistles of Gonzaga in a way that says, yeah, this is worth it financially, and
because they can't be getting
that more than covers the cost
than anything.
Yeah, the added travel and those kind of things. Yeah, you got to believe membership in the West Coast Conference doesn't do much for them. But there's got to be a way to put a value on it, as opposed to. I mean, I can't believe everyone in the league just goes, "Oh yeah, we'll give up $2 million a year, bring Gonzaga." I mean, it's not going to work like that.
Well, so what? We all know NCAA units, right? So when you send a team to the Big 12 or the NCAA tournament, for every game that they play, you get a unit. And at least 3 years ago, and I think this changes, and I'm sure it only just goes up, but 3 years ago, that was worth $1.7 million. And the more games you play, the more units you bring in. And that money goes to the conference, and it's kind of spread out over a few years. And so, from that perspective, you would be bringing in some revenue with Gonzaga that you couldn't really quantify as easily with like a football program, for example, right?
But I assume that NCAA unit wouldn't change a whole lot. They're getting that as part of a member of the West Coast Conference as well. So,
right, but they'll be bringing that to you instead of bringing that to the West Coast
I
Conference.
got you.
More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Gus and Clint. I'm Aaron. We're joining you today until 6. We'd love to get your thoughts and your comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. Tug has this. Would that possibly open up Big 12 for revenue from CBS for basketball rights? I mean, I think that at this point, everything is spoken for. Right? I think that, ESPN and Fox have all your basketball stuff. I don't think that there's any kind of room to
either
to really bring in more. This in the chat line. What about the Zags and baseball? They'd be a great fit in that sport as well.
Yeah, that's what I can't believe this would be baseball only as opposed to
basketball only.
I mean, basketball only as opposed to just we know they don't play football, but just all the sports. I don't know what the cost is of adding their cross country team and their tennis team and baseball team, whatever. As a footnote to this, and I'm sure it's purely coincidental, but the Zags open their baseball season here in February with a 4-gamer.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been a good team the last couple of years. They were here 2 years ago for a Tuesday, Wednesday, and they were both 5-4 wins by the Red Raiders. And then they left here and went to TCU and took 2 of 3 from a good Horned Frog team. And they've been a postseason club, and that program has slowly gotten better. So that's their baseball product will, come right in and be, one of them would be a competitive brand. I guess that's the way to say it.
This in the chat line. What happens when Mark Few is no longer the basketball coach at Gonzaga? Do they stay relevant in basketball? If not, the Big 12 is still stuck with them. If the Big 12 added them, I'm wondering about the long-term risk versus reward for basically a basketball-only school. You raise a good point, right? Because while they weren't terrible before Mark Few, he clearly elevated that program, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he elevated that in a big, big way. His immediate predecessor won about 75% of their games, made it to the Elite Eight. In fact, the year before Mark Few took over, the guy before that won about 60% of his games. But certainly, that's not the type of number in terms of winning percentage that would kind of catch the eye of a power conference. Hey, I got to add Gonzaga. They've won 60% of their games in the West Coast Conference, right? That totally makes sense. I get the concern. I get the question. And I also wonder too, like in men's basketball and I guess women's basketball too, that addition makes sense. I mean, it's way out there. It's an outpost, but all those teams are used to flying to these games anyways.
Yeah.
That's going to be a pretty lengthy flight there for UCF and for West Virginia, to be sure. But that's worth it. But in baseball and the other sports, cross country, stuff like that, you wonder if that juice is worth the squeeze unless you add more teams around that area, right? In the Pacific time zone, in the Mountain time zone, to kind of fill in some gaps. You know,
I mean, think about the possibility of, if Gonzaga's added to this league, and let's say a couple years down the road or whatever, Washington and Oregon get the invitation to the Big Ten, and then dominoes start to fall, and basically what I'm saying is Gonzaga has membership in a Power 5 school, and Wazoo and Oregon State don't.
Right.
Man, that's a tough deal. And the key thing there is, again, I'm most curious about this from, the information that I don't know that I've ever seen is the valuation of basketball and the media rights package of that $380 million, that was talked about last week or over the weekend, I guess, whatever. That, how much of that is based on their football viewership and how much is based on basketball. That years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I would have gone, it was as naive as could be. 2/3 football, 1/3 basketball. And the reality, it may be more 90-10,
sure.
95-5. I really don't know. But, for this move to make some sense, pun intended, does somebody somewhere is going, no, the basketball portion of this is worth this much. And it feels like somebody at Fox has very much done that because they're going to be involved in Big 12 basketball in a way that they've never been before.
Well, and if you're looking at this from a Fox perspective, suddenly you have a window every, 2 times a week where you're able to air Big 12 Conference men's basketball games at 10 o'clock Eastern, and that's going to draw. I mean, you think a Gonzaga Kansas home game, in Spokane, that's going to be a hell of a 10 o'clock draw.
And do you think that maybe that
Eastern.
Do you think maybe that is one of the answers to what's in it for us on the Gonzaga side, that if they really can't be portioned into that $380 million, and let's say that there's not a lot more money added to it, but because it wasn't really part of that $380 million, that wasn't part of it, Gonzaga. But Gonzaga going, hey, you know what's in it for us? Home games against Kansas,
Houston,
Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, da. That they go, ooh, yeah, that has a whole lot more sizzle to it than Pacific and whoever.
You know what's interesting? The first report about the Big 12's new TV deal came out Sunday, right?
Yeah, it was kind of oddly timed, I thought.
Sunday
over
morning.
The weekend, yeah.
There's not been an announcement officially, right?
That's true.
Like the Big 12 announced months ago when we've entered in discussions with ESPN and Fox about our media package. They've not been shy about addressing this stuff in public. I wonder if we haven't seen an announcement yet because this isn't finished.
Yeah, it makes me think now that has any of the reporting come from the media side of this? In other words, ESPN hasn't come out and said, hey, we've just agreed to.
Oh,
is that right?
I mean, Pete Thamel had a story on it, who writes for ESPN.
But
there have not been any kind of official acknowledgement.
Press release kind of a thing.
There's been nothing official.
That's a great point.
And typically, and it seems like the lag time between, hey, this kind of being reported and the official announcement is a couple of days.
Sure. If that was flying around on Saturday, maybe you're like, hey, let's hold this till Tuesday and we can get through all the Monday kind of post-weekend football stuff. Well, I also can't believe, and just in seeing the flow on Twitter and some of these things, first of all, and I don't know that this is an intended thing here. I think it's all about Gonzaga and who they are in basketball, number one. But yet another one of those things that the Pac-12's going, oh, wait, we were kind of thinking about them. Yeah, like BYU. In terms of the viable entities that the Pac-12 could perhaps add, that list, starts to shrink a little if this ends up playing out.
And how about this question, right? Yormark has said he wants a national conference, and certainly adding Gonzaga in basketball or even in all of its sports that also share slots with the Big 12, that you're accomplishing that.
Good grief.
I mean, would you stop at Gonzaga? I mean, are there any other basketball primary programs that you'd go kick the tires on? Villanova?
Creighton? I
mean, like what? They're not Gonzaga, right? Gonzaga's played for national championships and all that stuff. Of course, Villanova's one of you. But I mean,
God dang,
why wouldn't you?
I would love the Nova get, and I think that would be great with having, closer to Cincinnati. You were talking about closer travel partners. Right. I think they would enjoy that as well.
It'd give you an even number.
If you could monopolize college basketball, and you have the ability to right now, which it seems what Yormark would love to do, why not?
Now you've got a footing, to use the Big Ten word. Now you've got footing in the number 4 TV market if you go invite Villanova. That's Philly's number 4.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.